So yes, I was lucky. I worked for a really big company, Rogers Communications, worked for them, which is really unheard of these days, almost 34 years. A lot of people do jump around in their jobs. I had a great pension plan. I fed into that, did some great RSP investments. So I call it retirement 56. I'm in my 50s, but I call it, I'm fake retired. I'm not retired. Retired feels like when we think of what our grandparents were. Mm-hmm. So I'm full-time flower farming in terms of when they need all the bells and whistles on them. And then I can kind of segue back into part-time teaching. And then I also get a really lovely pension check that comes in the mail once a month too. So I'm in probably a luckier boat when you think of a lot of people starting a small business. I still have a backup plan supporting me, but I'm not just doing this for fun. I mean, I am taking this seriously. There's been some losses. There's been some gains. There's a better business plan for next year. I'm always learning and figuring out how to expand and how did I mess that up. So yeah, there's a lot of different pieces at play, but coming from your backgrounds and what you talk to your clients about, we've had some really good advice and have definitely planned for the future from way back in the day.
Welcome to the How Canada Works podcast, brought to you in part by Cherry Hill Private Wealth and Harbourfront Wealth Management. Adrian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. My name is Adrian Blake. I'm an investment advisor with Cherry Hill Private Wealth, and I'm with Trevor Miller, also an investment advisor at Cherry Hill Private Wealth. Trevor, how are you?
I'm doing well, Adrian. It's starting to turn into Christmas season. I think last time we were talking about it, the Christmas was out pre-Halloween. Now it seems a little bit more seasonal. People are putting up their Christmas lights. Have you got to that point yet in your holiday cheer?
No, but thank you for the reminder to get the Christmas lights up before it snows this year. Because I'll tell you, ladders and snow don't really go together all that well.
That's always my move.
Thank you for the reminder. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's too early. Oh my goodness, it's snowing and my hands are freezing trying to put those little plastic things. They're all snapping everywhere. It's probably time. So maybe that's a weekend project.
I should have had the roofing guys do it while they were here doing my roof. They could have just done the lights too. Poor planning.
Yeah. Have you looked into any of those people that come and put up the lights and take care of all that stuff for you?
No, I feel like I'm still young enough. I'm willing to get up on the ladder.
Yeah, I don't mind that, but I always find that the last couple of years, as I put up the Christmas lights, one bulb always goes out, and I always have the ones. And I feel like I buy okay Christmas lights. The whole strand goes out, and it's either takes me hours and hours to try and get it redone, or I've got to bring it back. And it just seems like, maybe if that was somebody else's problem, that would be an okay thing as well.
Trevor, there's no such thing as decent Christmas lights.
That's true.
So today, switching gears, today we're talking to Lisa Drew. She's a contact of mine that I have on LinkedIn, and we haven't spoken in person before. She's just one of these contacts that you kind of develop sometimes on LinkedIn if you're active there, and I am. But I was looking for a guest for our podcast, obviously, because that's part of what we need here is guests to talk to. And she has a really interesting story, a storied career in hosting like morning radio out of Kitchener. And then, a transition into a business in farming flowers. And so I'm super interested to find out, how that second career came about for her. And maybe some of the trials and tribulations that she's gone through.
Absolutely. I always find it really fascinating how people, can go to completely different, seemingly different kind of careers. And she had, I think it was 33 years in radio before she moved on to this. So it's kind of a retirement thing, but she's still young enough that it's not quite. But just that second career later, I don't even want to say later in life. She's young enough that it's not later in life, but as you're nearing that retirement age, to be making that change, I always find that really fascinating. Entrepreneurship is really, really challenging. So I'm really interested to hear what she did and how she did it in a way that, seems pretty successful and see if she's having fun doing it.
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
Awesome. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today. This is my first time meeting you, and I believe, Adrian, is this your first time meeting as well?
Yeah, that's right. We're connected on LinkedIn. We have a few connections in common, but this is the first time that I've really had a formal conversation with Lisa. But I'm very excited to get into some detail here about Lisa's journey. I think it's going to be very interesting.
And you both scream that you're flower fans. I can tell right now you're really into dahlias. So I cannot wait to share with you.
I've got a whole underwater garden going on back here. You can't really
counts.
see.
That counts. Yeah.
It is funny, and I know you're poking at two very bearded guys here when you're saying that, but as I was getting ready for this conversation, I was kind of laughing. My wife does most of the grocery shopping, and most grocery stores have that little flower area. She never, ever gets any flowers. Every time me and my son go and get groceries, we always stop by, get some flowers. I just think that having something like that adds so much to, any space. So you do joke, but I am the one in my family that gets the flowers and not just for special occasions.
I will give you full points for that. And studies prove not only is it good for your marriage or partnership, bringing home flowers, but flowers have this great way of bringing joy. And there's been Harvard studies on what flowers can bring to your life. So it's not just playing with flowers, but I think flowers can represent and remind you of simple things that can really bring you joy as well. So there's that piece kind of jumping right into it as well.
I agree. Yeah, it definitely, makes any space, just a little more welcoming. And, we spend, I know Adrian does as well. We spend a lot of time in our outdoor gardens, making sure that, has the dahlias and, I've got, the coneflowers and all of that. Try to keep it, pretty localized with what we do outside, but also inside. Just having some of that plant life and flowers definitely changes the whole feeling of a space.
Absolutely. Now, we obviously want to hear how you got into the business of flowers, but part of what caught my attention on LinkedIn was your storied history as a radio host. And so I know from looking at LinkedIn, you did that for 33 years. It was a long career. And I'm curious how you go from a long career doing something that, as far as I can tell, doesn't have anything to do with flowers, to your new entrepreneurial journey. And I think that's really the crux of what we want to talk about today is big picture, that transition. Can you share a little bit about your history in radio and how you ended up here?
Yeah, so I joke I've jumped from being a radio girl to a flower girl, and they both involve some early mornings, but radio was super early. So I used to be part of a team with Rogers, with City News 570 News back in the olden days, and really back in the olden days in Kitchener, it was 570 Chime. Started as a reporter covering fires and murders and council meetings that went to midnight, and did traffic reporting for years and years, and then became morning anchor, which is where I kind of ended my radio gig. But it involved getting up at 2:30 in the morning, some really long commutes in the middle of snowstorms, basically to go into work to tell people when they woke up that they didn't have to go to work and school was canceled. So I thought, what other job do you drive through? You feel like you're in the middle of a snow globe. I'm driving into work in the middle of the night to a backcountry road to tell people you don't have to go into work today. We've got you covered. So I loved it. I still adore it. I'm still fully connected to radio and journalism. I teach at Conestoga College. I teach radio news and journalism interviewing skills, and I also do some broadcast performance as well. So I have not left it behind. It is still very dear to my heart. But the jump to flowers was a slower evolution. It involved definitely a location change, which happened before the pandemic. We lucked out making the move from the Cambridge area. We were in Blair, and we moved to just outside of St. Mary's about a year and a half before the pandemic. So we kind of were ahead of that big Toronto where everyone was moving to a rural site. We kind of jumped ahead of that, and we found a 2-acre property. And, God bless my husband. When I said, I think I need goats in my life, he said, okay. But it also gave me, and I have goats, I'll tell you about my animals too. We have a lot of sunshine. Where I was in a very shaded old property. We're in a beautiful historical property here, but it's farmland. We're surrounded by farmland, and I have land to grow. And it just started to take on a bigger part of my life. And then it transitioned to a business, probably more seriously in the last couple of years, making some local contacts, some great female mentors in business saying, why don't you bring your flowers to our shop? Why are you not selling to us? So I all of a sudden had some instant customer base at a beautiful shop downtown St. Mary's called the Flower Mill. Two incredible women run this business, and they had my flowers out on display, and I've been dealing with them ever since, and I've been expanding. I have my own flower stand. I also do workshops, even non-flower season, which we are now since the frost hit. I'm doing a Christmas workshop, Christmas in the Country, coming up this weekend. So, it's really evolved, but a lot of it involves connecting with people and finding joy. And this is still another part of the joy in my life, growing and sharing. And, making some awesome mistakes along the way from a business perspective. I'm still learning big time.
Can't wait to hear about those.
Yeah.
That's we definitely want to hear those stories. You said you're in St. Mary's. That's about halfway between Stratford and London. Have I got that right?
That's right. We're just past the land of everything Justin Bieber.
Okay,
and St. Mary's is known as Stone Town. Absolutely gorgeous. You need to come and visit. They have a big Christmas merchants event coming on this coming weekend, but it's beautiful, beautiful historic stone buildings, a lot like downtown Galt, Cambridge.
Okay.
Yeah, gorgeous.
I'm just sitting here picturing, and I'm trying to put myself in your shoes with me and my wife sitting around having a cup of coffee, and me just saying, or her saying to me, I really want some goats. How did that conversation actually go? Was this? Did he see it coming? Was this something that was already coming down the pipe, or was this just like random coffee in the morning and just out of nowhere?
So this feels like now we're going into a relationship podcast. I am still married.
Okay.
I think he knew what he was getting when he married me and knew that I was leaving the house in the middle of the night to, as I always say, play on the radio. He's always been open to my bigger ideas. We've done a lot of big renos together. So I think we kind of figured out we could sort of work together. We were into historical homes and renovating, and the next evolution was bigger land, bigger space. And I just wanted some goats. So we have goats. We also have some rescue sheep. I have some ducks. We have 5 barn cats, all my husband's doing. Barn cats that sleep very comfortably inside of our house. We have 2 dogs as well. And I joke that I have 2 kids and 1 husband, but he was very open to it. I think he just figured, why not? And he's still saying, why not, when he's, cutting grass and moving dirt for me in the middle of the night, or getting a delivery for me as we prep for a workshop, or, trying to figure out, why is this area flooding again? Let's move all of these plants now. He's been a great partner for sure.
Wonderful. And you again, you're funny. I like this.
Okay.
Part of this is the relationship, right? And going into a business is a big part of, I know my wife stood by me in pretty lean years and, helped make sure that I was not only emotionally supported, but, in the early days, also financially supported. You go through this as a business owner where you have the ups and downs. You need that partner that will definitely make sure that you can be your best self when things aren't quite what the 9-to-5 was. And what really excites me about this conversation with you, and I do want to get into flowers and that side of the business as well, but a lot of our clients, and you have on your LinkedIn, retired from but you're obviously not retired, and I see a lot of our clients that are going into those retirement years and are looking for something to give themselves meaning and to do something different. So, having this conversation with you, I think is exciting. You definitely, and I know I'm not allowed to ask age, but you definitely seem a lot younger than somebody who worked 33 years in any profession. So it might not be necessarily, 65, 70 retirements in your case, but I think just going through having a career and then moving into something else is something that a lot of people want to hear. Like, the world is definitely changing, where the idea of retirement is, more akin to what you're doing. Have that 9-to-5 job, have that first career, and then what does the next 30, 40 plus years look like? So, part of having that conversation with your spouse is important for a lot of people. So I'm happy you share that. That's pretty unreal that people are that understanding and just go. All right, let's do it. It's cool.
You touched on a great point. So yes, I was lucky. I worked for a really big company, Rogers Communications, worked for them, which is really unheard of these days, almost 34 years. A lot of people do jump around in their jobs. I had a great pension plan. I fed into that, did some great RSP investments. So I call it retirement 56. I'm in my 50s, but I call it, I'm fake retired. I'm not retired. Retired feels like when we think of what our grandparents were, this isn't old. And I'm lucky with what I'm doing. I teach part-time. So that means I have basically May until September off, which is perfect for my busiest time of year as a flower farmer. So I'm full-time flower farming in terms of when they need all the bells and whistles on them. And then I can kind of segue back into part-time teaching. And then I also get a really lovely pension check that comes in the mail once a month too. So I'm in probably a luckier boat when you think of a lot of people starting a small business. I still have a backup plan supporting me, but I'm not just doing this for fun. I mean, I am taking this seriously. There's been some losses. There's been some gains. There's a better business plan for next year. I'm always learning and figuring out how to expand and how did I mess that up. So yeah, there's a lot of different pieces at play, but coming from your backgrounds and what you talk to your clients about, we've had some really good advice and I've definitely planned for the future from way back in the day.
Wonderful.
So I'm curious how intentional it was for getting into this new role. And I had a previous career as a wedding photographer, and I got into it for all the wrong reasons. Because I was in high school, a buddy of mine bought a really expensive camera and then wouldn't shut up about it. And I could not handle that. My ego could not take it. And so I went out and bought a better camera. And then I had this really expensive piece of technology, which I figured, okay, I better monetize it. And I ended up down a path as a wedding photographer, mostly because I wanted to monetize an asset, which those sound like words that a financial planner might say. And so I think I've ended up in the right place after all of it. But it was a very accidental, direction that I took my career in for a little while. How intentional was it for you to start this second chapter compared to I want goats and now I own flowers?
Good point. I think I always thought I was a mini Martha Stewart way back in the day. So I always connected with, I want to be out there. This is not just gardening. This is me doing something a little more hardcore and getting a little too crazy. And, I just planted almost 1,300 tulip bulbs in the last couple of days because I'm planning on a bigger spring season and having a better product to offer early in the season. It did transition. How thoughtful was it? Probably some days way more thoughtful, and other days we're just like, let's just do it. Let's just jump in. How much is this going to cost to build these raised beds? Because clearly that's a low area and we've got clay soil and I'm flooding over there. How are we going to get around that to make this profitable for this part of it? I'd say I'm more thoughtful about it now, but I think a lot of things just came together, but we had a bigger, and I say we because I did need my partner to be on board for, he's very good with a tractor. So I kind of need him in my life. But it was definitely, it just came when I finally said, okay, it's time to say goodbye to getting up at 2:30 in the morning. I knew I had my teaching as a great backup and to fuel that passion and still be connected to my industry. I wasn't walking away from it. This just felt the next thing that was going to ignite me. I was not going to be, I'm just going to sit at home and I don't know, go to Florida. That's not me. I want to go to Paris, which I've done. I want to do that again, but it's not, it just seemed the right path. And I was going towards that light the whole time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And in your 50s to retire in the, our grandparents' sense of the word, where you retire at 55 and you have, 5 to 10 years left of life. I mean, that was the reality, in previous generations, whereas now we're living much longer. We're living much healthier longer. To retire after 33 years in your 50s and then not do anything, seems like not a very fun way to
boring.
Live the rest of your
boring.
Absolutely. So had you started thinking about this next phase and whether it was the flower side of it or something else. Had you started thinking about that while you were still working? Like, did you start putting that in or was it get done this? We've got the financials set up so that we can take some time and figure out what we want to be? Or did it start earlier than that?
I was dabbling for sure. I think during the pandemic, I think everyone had a lot of like whoa moments and probably thought, there's more to life than being on Zoom. And by the way, in radio, we were still commuting in. We were probably the only ones actually still going into a studio. It was, it was bare bones in my building, in my office. But we were still going in where everyone else was working from home. So I didn't feel like, I was hidden from the pandemic. I was teaching online, but we were still in the studio. But I think it gave us a lot of time to be spending with our family at our home. We were kind of locked onto our property. And that's where I kind of cranked things up a bit more and cranked it up a bit more. But I had a really fantastic girlfriend trip. I went with my bestie to Paris and London. And it was a year before we retired. I remember we were sitting on a bench by the Seine saying she had just retired, sold her business. And she said, okay, like, what are you going to do? What's your thoughts? And we kind of had that moment. And I had watched how it had played out for her. And I just thought, yeah, there's more. There's more out there. And it, and a year later, I gave my notice and retired. But again, I still feel it's fake retired. Do you know what I mean? I'm not retired. I hate that word. I think Serena Williams, she had this classic Vogue interview and she said, it wasn't retired. Was it rewired? It was recreation, she had another great word for it. It'll come to me during this interview, but it wasn't retiring. It was like another next shooting for the next star. And I loved the way she had put that. I wish I had that word in my head right now for you.
I'm sure at some point you'll just be like, this is it.
It will. And you won't care by then. So
no, but it is such that retirement. And I have trouble, in Adrian, in my industry, like, how do we talk about this? Because it's not what it typically was. When we think about retirement, we think about what our grandparents did. It's different now. My parents are in their mid to late 60s at this point, and they're looking at kind of winding things down on one side and do it like. But it's not going to be traditional. They're still. My dad was out mountain biking this last week. They are active people. It's so for them to retire and just sit there with the windows down in a dark room is not them. They are going to go out and do things and probably have this second career or this whatever that word is going to be. I think, having a new word for what this next phase is actually important for people because retirement has so many connotations behind it as it is. When you were switching gears right away here, going from when you were looking at setting up everything, did you have other people that you brought in, like accountants, lawyers, other business people? You mentioned a friend that had a business she wound down.
I should have. I'm legit learning by the seat of my pants. I have just some great women entrepreneurs in my life. I also joined this great women's group out of Stratford called the Fresh Idea Collective that brings together women entrepreneurs that get together on a monthly basis. And you learn from each other, connect with them, support each other, and find out what are you doing? Who are you using? How does this work? I laugh because I think one of my first years when I was taking bouquets into the flour mill, one of the owners said, Lisa, receipts would be a good thing. Because I wasn't giving them, I'm like, oh yeah, I probably should give them a formal invoice or some kind of receipt. Good point. It's just, I hadn't even gotten that far. So, but that's like a classic that kind of sums up how I was evolving and learning by the seat of my pants. One of my dear friends, my bestie who sold her business, she was a very famous cake owner designer. She has great advice for me on a regular basis. She'll go, and are you doing this? And I'm like, yeah, or no, I'm not. So it's been organic. I'm still getting there. I should be way more, this winter, I think, okay, I'll focus more now that I'm not out in the field. I'll focus more on the books and the bigger plans and what else should I have? Who should I have on my team to help me even in a consulting way?
I think a lot of people will appreciate hearing that you can jump first and figure the rest out later. That is possible.
I don't know if it's the best thing to do, but it's so far kind of working.
I think there's some balance though, because if you don't jump at all because you're so worried about perfect, like if you let perfect be the enemy of good, then you'll never get good, right? You just be stuck with nothing, which isn't as good as much you might want it to be, probably. And that's probably typical for a lot of people. Like, a lot of people who aren't born entrepreneurs. We got to figure that out later on somehow in our life. I think it's nice to hear that you can jump and then iron out the wrinkles over some time. And actually, that maybe dovetails a little bit to one of my thoughts. Like you seem to do, like, you're a farmer, you're an event host, you're a workshop host, you run some retail, you do some wholesale, like. You've
social media, which is humongous too. There's
marketing, right?
Learning how to build a website, and I need a lot of help.
As do all business owners. Yeah, it's you're not alone.
Yeah. So how did you get into each of these, like, kind of layers? Is this just like, oh, there's a good idea, let's do it? Is there any thoughts and planning around it? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, or demand. Someone brought it to my attention. I would love if you would host something where you could teach me, like, how do I start a flower garden in my own backyard? I don't know how to do that. Whereas a lot of us would have memories of your grandmother teaching you at the cottage, or, you know what I mean? I thought, great idea for a workshop. So we did that. And there's been a taste for people, corporations, businesses who want to host a team building event. They want to do something like that. And even though I'm hosting a Christmas workshop, I don't grow Christmas trees and that sort of thing, but we're doing, evergreen arrangements in a sap bucket. And there's also a learn to decorate cookies like a pro aspect with, my awesome baker buddy. It's just something that there's some demand. And then there's other things like, oh, I should probably try that, or that's a really great idea. I think connecting with different associations, seeing what other flower farmers are doing. YouTube has been this magical place because it's like we can click on for an in-demand learning session from around the world. I can watch flower farmers do a little tutorial on that's why I'm having issues with this type of dahlia, or that's why I cannot grow Lysianthus by seed for the life of me for the last 3 years. And I finally had to do what I find out 98% of flower farmers and florists are doing in Canada. They order these little baby plugs. They get a surrogate mother and then they get them shipped. I didn't know that. I was sitting here praying on these little seeds and they just wouldn't go. So it's learning, YouTube has been invaluable that way. And then just word of mouth and meeting people and seeing what people want to do. And then that kind of helps me form some ideas, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, and having those resources, whether it's YouTube, and then I think the biggest thing that you said that is just listen to what people are asking you that they want, right? And a lot of times, as business owners or just people in general, we have something fixed in our mind of what will work, and we tune out everything else. And I think that what you're saying is, I've got some ideas, but I'm also open to what's out there, and I think that's so important. Anytime you run into business, because you can go down some pretty wrong rabbit holes, which leads me to my next question.
Yes,
you kind of mentioned that you had some mistakes along the way. What would be some of the biggest mistakes you had?
Trusting that my soil wouldn't let me down. I, thank God, have obviously I live in a country area. I have some fabulous neighbors who are farmers that can give me some great advice or tell me what they're doing for they're growing wheat and corn and beans. Well, I'm growing flowers, but we have a lot of clay soil in the St. Mary's area, which means it can be tougher for roots, it can be tougher for hydration, but when we get rain, and sometimes we get a lot of rain, like this season, we had 3 humongous downpours. Like my ducks were swimming in my front lawn. Like I have video of them where I have a pool that's feet deep around my potting shed, and my ducks are out there for days thinking this is like the best thing in the world. But what it meant was I had some really saturated areas. I lost for 2 years in a row a pretty heavy investment of peony transplants that I had put in because I was hoping for this glorious, beautiful spring windfall of peonies, and they do not like to get their feet wet, as we say in the business. They don't like wet roots. And the water was just there and I couldn't deal with it. So we had to game plan. I had to move some things. I definitely suffered a loss when it came to my peony investment. Move them over to a different part of our field area where I've never had flooding. And then guess what happened this spring? We got flooding again. So I'm like, okay, maybe God is telling me peonies are not my thing, or we need to move them around. They're not great for raised beds because they have to be planted at a certain level where they have their rhizomes kind of at the exact level of soil. And it's a bit like a complicated how you plant them. So I'm still kind of making peace with where do I go with peonies in my life, but it's the flooding. We invested then. Very quickly going into this season, we did raised beds. So that meant building structures and building things that were almost 1.5 feet, 2 feet off the ground with better soil. I brought some better soil in. We had a lot of great compost. I have barn animals that help with some of my compost and fertilizing situation. And we did raised beds. And I'm convinced that's what did save my flower season. When I looked at what some of the other area flower farmers were dealing with, I had some of my prime, more expensive flowers in raised beds. So when it did rain or we had the torrential winds, I could either have them properly staked in a more formal way, but they had better drainage. So I know that doesn't mean much in terms of how much you care about flowers, but I watched my expensive mistakes and I figured, okay, how are we going to do this? I'm going to have to invest more to make sure it's a sure thing. And it definitely saved my season for sure. And I think I'm going to do even more raised beds in the spring. We're just trying to game plan that over the winter and where else I can place them on the property.
Yeah, I mean, the ability to pivot when these things happen is definitely crucial. And, I'm not sure if it's, a global warming or just kind of a way that the world is changing when it comes to weather patterns. Out in BC in the Okanagan, they lost most of their grape crops this past year because of a couple of cold snaps and just they hadn't seen in like ever. So, as things change now they're looking at different clones and, different ways to do their business, which, is really crucial for everything, whether it's flowers, grapes, or just, in our business, there's, new fintech and things that are coming out. And if we just stayed in the same way we were doing things before, we're going to be either like your competition who, didn't see the changes and had to pay, or Blockbuster who famously, didn't take on Netflix in a day. These things happen in every business. So, maybe flowers isn't as relatable to every single person, but I think going through, something where you're having to make that pivot is definitely very, very relatable as well.
So now that you've gone through this transition and you're, for all intents and purposes, a full-time flower farmer.
That's fun to say, isn't it?
It is. Lots of good F's.
Flower farmer. Yeah. Well, I keep when you mention the flower mill, I have to keep telling myself it's the other kind of flour. Like they're not grinding up petals.
Was a historical churn to make flour. Yeah. So I love that I'm actually selling at the flour mill. Yeah.
Right. So but in my head, that's not what I heard you say. So that's perfect. But like having gone through this transition, is this something that you now wish you had done sooner, or is this just the right time in your life? Like, how do you think about it at this level?
I think it is the right time. Yeah. I mean, I've learned a lot and I still have a lot more to learn, but I think it landed how it was supposed to land. And I'm a great believer in things happen for a reason at certain times or just become evident. I think it was just the right time. If I had started this 10 years ago, would we have found this property then? I think we landed here in all the right ways, and then it afforded some great opportunities and it all just kind of made sense. I think it just played out how so far it's supposed to, and we'll see how it keeps playing out. But there is some thoughtful planning in there, or, it's not just a quick, just throw money out the window either.
No, it definitely doesn't sound like it from that side either. Do you have a long-term plan on this, or is it this is Is there going to be an actual
Good
retirement at some point?
Maybe when like I can't stand up anymore after leaning over weeding or something. No, I haven't really thought way down the road, but I can see myself still doing this for the next 5 to 10 years. So I'm definitely in it. And I think that historically the data shows it usually takes a good 3 solid years for flower farmers to really start showing a true profit and everything to really start chugging along. And I think I'm just there. So, I'm really excited already about next spring. I'm already planning for next summer. And I feel I have so many other big pieces in place, and I have I have a great customer base now. So I'm committed. I can't let this go. And I love it too much. I really do.
No, definitely. We definitely get that from you talking about it. Was the flowers always something that you enjoyed, that side of it? Or was this something that came later as well?
Oh yeah, I've always been into flowers, and yeah, there's just no doubt about it. I wouldn't say I was into dahlias before, which is a big part of my crop now. I really got into dahlias, I would say, during the pandemic, thanks to a very famous flower farmer in the States. She's on the Magnolia Network, Erin B. with Floret Farms. And she put a book out on dahlias and kind of grew. She became, I call her like the Martha Stewart of flowers now in this business. But she just showed, you can do this. She started on 2 acres and just grew this huge base. And she's all about passing it forward to other flower farmers, getting them training, showing what works, putting videos out. So yeah, she inspired me and just kind of kept growing from there.
Amazing. We talked a little bit about the mistakes you made, but what would be some of the best things that you've done to help build the business? You mentioned a few different events and pieces of that with social media. Like, is there one, or is it a combination of them? Like, what's kind of driven the business the most?
We were talking before about how I was preparing for this. And during the pandemic, when I was full-time radio and still teaching on the side, I did sign up for, and I took when we were allowed to be in person, because it was still when there were shutdowns and then it would open up again. Mm-hmm. I did take a 6-week program with the Cambridge Flower School. So I did some basic floral artistry, and I graduated. So I've learned, yay, I got a degree, Mom. But it was just to further my flower skills in terms of if I wanted to do weddings. And I know now I don't do weddings. I don't want to do weddings. And I mean, Adrian, you can probably speak to that if you want to give up your entire weekend.
Yep.
And deal with maybe someone who's not having the best day or high expectations. I don't want to give up days of being on a wedding site and making sure my flowers are looking gorgeous from the start of the ceremony to moving them over to a reception site. And so what I've come around is I sell party buckets. So I can personalize buckets if you want to do it yourself in terms of do your own wedding florals, which a lot of couples are moving to, giving expenses, or I can make your bouquets and supply you flowers for you to create, or you can rent antique milk glass from me for your vases. So I'm providing a side business. But it just little things like that all helps things fall into place, like taking the course and thinking, what else can I offer that's connected to my business, but feels like a win for the customer and for you. Those little pieces, I think, helped build that. I don't know if I fully answered that question or not. Did I?
That's great.
Did I?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
I think I went off a couple roads there.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
And you're right. That's exactly what got me out of the wedding photography thing as well. I mean,
having a wife.
Well, it encouraged my life at one point, because I actually met my wife. She was a bridesmaid in one of the weddings that I was photographing.
Nice move.
So yeah, that was
wedding crashers.
A little humble brag there, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. It's worked out okay so far. But then I also didn't want to spend the rest of my life working my weekends, right? And so at some point, I wanted to get out, and I'm sure it's the same, for you. I mean, like, as a flower farmer, you can't schedule the weather, but you're going to do that part whenever you have to. But you can schedule the event, in a way that works for you.
That's right. I mean, I'm still up harvesting at 7 a.m. and putting together bouquets for orders and delivery, and getting things out to the flower stand. But I can control. I mean, I still wake up really early. When you wake up at 2:30 in the morning for, almost 30 years, your body thinks 5 a.m. is sleeping in. So I'm still way up before the rest of my family, and I can go out and, be out with the dog in the field and cutting things. And, it's a pretty joyful time of morning. So yeah, it's a win. It's a win. And I'm all by myself out there.
That sounds beautiful. We probably should have brought this up earlier, but it's funny. We actually kind of share the same name, like it's Cherry Hill Blooms and we're Cherry Hill Private Wealth. And there's obviously no connection between us because we've only just met each other. Is it just that you're on Cherry Hill Road or did the name come from somewhere?
Yeah, it was, first of all, I thought, what a cute name when we moved to this. And I used to call it a street. Well, no, I live in a farm area. It's road. All my neighbors say, no, you're on a gravel road. You're down the road. You're not down the street. So yeah, Cherry Hill Road, just outside of St. Mary's is the road that we're on. So I just thought for marketing, it was a cute name and kind of helps you find me. There wasn't a lot of deep thought on that. It was just, it made sense at the time. Maybe I could have gotten a little more flowery in the name, but for location, it works. And it was kind of a cute name.
Oh, it's awesome. We went through a heck of a process.
Not a lot of marketing in that one.
No, we went through a heck of a process to try to figure out to land on Cherry Hill. I mean, we had, it was 45 shortlisted options that we were whittling down to get to Cherry Hill. And we knew we wanted something warm and outdoorsy, and we mountain bike and we hike and we're active and we like the outside and all of that kind of stuff. And so I think it was actually Trevor that came up with the Cherry Hill name because of the there's a Cherry Hill at the Royal Botanical Gardens in Burlington, and we're our office is in Burlington, and so a little walk around the RBG and Cherry Hill, we'll put that name on the list, and it fit the most things because we didn't want to be, the black and gold, hard finance bros with the lion, right? Like that's not us, and never will be. And so, Cherry Hill Private Wealth, like that, just connects a lot more dots for us. But I just think it's a really nice name. I think you lucked out that you're on Cherry Hill Road. Well, how perfect.
Yeah, it's great. And yeah, it's working out. I did think about branding. Obviously, I think about social media and that piece, which is a whole nother ball game that, I think I do a pretty good game at, but I really need to step up when I think about what we're covering in my classes and talking about videos and, the trends on TikTok now and different things. There's still some other bars that I'm climbing on or I'm gradually playing with. So it's all part of my bigger, what am I going to do this winter? Get up on my own, doing videos and how-tos and, maybe connecting me more personally on the site, not just the odd, selfie with flowers, but really kind of reaching out and connecting more when you think about this is what I've been doing for 30 years. I should probably be a little more visible, in an audio and video way as well. So that's my next piece for branding. I don't know where you're going with your branding next. Maybe I can steal an idea from you.
Well, more video is part of it. Yeah, absolutely. So we appreciate that approach as well. This podcast is great. Like we love talking to folks like yourself, and we do some topics that are very financially bent and some that are much more lifestyle. And then taking the podcast and making it not only audio format but also video. So there's a lot of similarities, I think, in some of that there.
Yeah, I think the big thing that we're trying to accomplish is yours definitely does well with video, video and pictures and that side of it. I mean, who doesn't want to look at beautiful bouquets and all of that? It definitely. Whereas with us, you have to look at us the whole time. It's not quite as great, but we try to make do. That's why the podcast version is there as well. But for us, the social media, and it is really trying to connect and answer comments quickly and just be engaging and show them who we really are, and that side of it is really what we're trying to accomplish with our social media presence. Is we're not trying to sell anything. If you want to talk to us, if you like us, you think that we can help, we're here for you. And I think that comes off as pretty honest in what we're trying to do. And then I think that's what people really see is that honesty in media. It's tough to be on social media, 4 or 5, 6 times a week and not be your honest self. Not only is it exhausting, I would imagine, but people see through it at some point there as well.
Yeah, authenticity. I mean, we talk about it daily in my radio news class and when you're on the air, but I mean, it does connect with your business and people know who's growing their flowers and know that it's just down the road and it didn't get shipped in from somewhere. And you know, that I'm that friendly face connected to it and I can be there for you, whether you're celebrating or remembering or, you know, just want to bring joy to someone who's having a rough day. You know, I think it all connects. So you're absolutely right. Just being you, I think, is what sells the business. And then you have the awesome product that obviously is the backbone of it.
Yeah. Lisa, you have a business that is built for Instagram. Like it's born for Instagram. Right?
Yeah. And trust me, I just even pictures of bulbs in the ground, I get great responses from, you know, just even me putting together a bouquet and twirling it. Twirling it, you know, against the background of the flower stand, like what gets views surprises me. Like I would have thought, oh, that was like such a gorgeous picture of that. Why didn't that get more interest or likes? And now I'm trying some stuff out on TikTok as well, because that's the big emerging base. And if you want to get a younger demo as well, that's where that scene is. So there's different, you know, from Instagram to X/Twitter. I just tried signing up for Blue Sky. I don't know if you've tried that out yet.
Haven't tried that one.
It's kind of like the new Blue Twitter.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be friendlier and not Elon. So I've just signed up for that. It's still way too early. It's just days, but I'm curious to see how that plays or lands. And I'm on Threads. But Instagram and TikTok are totally built for what I'm doing and showing flowers and, you know, me out in the flower field. That's what's getting the hits and the interest. And but mind you, posting an event on LinkedIn, the reach surprised me. And I had people come in from the Burlington area and Ancaster for my workshops because we were connected on LinkedIn. And I hadn't thought that I should be posting more regularly. Yeah, I have a business. Why am I not putting that up on LinkedIn? I was doing more my news side of things. So I keep thinking LinkedIn is more of a tool that I should be taking advantage of as well.
Yeah, it's funny. And we, on our marketing side, we really track, you know, pretty well, you know, where things come from, because there are a lot of surprises like that. And, you know, there's been some great videos where I'm like, this is gonna hit. This is amazing. And it has only a couple of views, and I've got ones where I'm like, oh, it's okay, and it's like hundreds and hundreds of, and so it's just really,
right? You're like, how did that happen?
but it is funny over time if you pay attention to it, where it goes, okay, this is how the algorithm works, or this is how it's kind of taken off, and you can kind of do it. But there's definitely a lot of surprises along the way. And Lisa, you kind of mentioned that you had some good success on Instagram and LinkedIn with some of your events. Here's the time for the plug. What events do you have coming up? You mentioned the Christmas.
Yeah, it's so weird
what's
because,
going on?
yeah, I don't have any flowers going on right now, but yet our Christmas workshop sold out in less than 24 hours. 24 women. We do have one awesome guy joining us too. So I was very happy about that. But it sold out in like under 24 hours. And I've had people asking me about it all year. And I'm like, this is so crazy because it's not to do with flowers, where flower workshops might take, you know, a week or so to sell out, or maybe maybe we need to add another week to that. I don't know if it's just the seasonal and people are ready to do more like get together with a bigger crowd. So I do have the Christmas in the Country workshop. It is now sold out, but it goes this weekend. And I have to tell you, it's like in the most adorable historical one-room schoolhouse just outside of St. Mary's. It's got all the charm of, you know, like you're out in the country, there's farmer fields all around you. And we're in this beautiful little quaint schoolhouse doing awesome things with greenery and cookies. Doesn't that make you excited?
It does. It does. It sounds lovely.
I can see it. I think Trevor's really wishing he had signed up for this.
You had me at cookies.
Yeah.
And a vintage sap bucket too. Yeah.
That does sound great. And do you have things going on throughout the winter? Or is this kind of closing off the season?
This is it. Yeah. So the winter is kind of me just game planning. I'm doing even an order where I'm putting order in for plugs, which are little tiny baby, not like even like the plugs you get at the greenhouses, you know, when you go to a traditional garden center and you put stuff in your annuals. These are little tiny babies, but someone has babysat the seed starting process. I call them like the surrogate mothers for seeds, like a Lysianthus seed, which is kind of basically called like a thornless frilly rose. They're absolutely stunning. They last weeks and weeks in a vase. Am I getting you excited? Lysianthus. And Lysianthus stems can go anywhere for $8 to $15 a stem, depending who's buying them, or wholesaling to florists and different varieties. So they can get quite the price point. Dahlias also go for a nice price point per stem. But someone is babysitting these, and these seeds have to be started in like January. And I don't have the greenhouse, nor do I have the patience of the tiniest little seed. They have to have all the perfect moisture conditions. It's like a big science experiment that I have not been able to figure out, nor it's worth it for me to order these babies that get shipped to me in April, ready to go right into the ground. And, now that I know that everyone else is doing this, I kind of felt like, why can't I do this?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, no, everyone does it. These things are impossible to start. So yeah. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm doing in the winter, placing those types of orders, game planning. We wanted to expand, raise beds, and then I want to think of more events. And I've started some different offshoots. I've made a really great connection with a woman who owns this fabulous Airbnb in Stratford. It's gorgeous, 5 Stratford. And she's been ordering my flowers to put in the rooms for these beautiful Airbnb rooms where people are coming from all over. So it's different little things. And I've been connecting with some retailers about doing a weekly drop off so they would have fresh flowers at their checkout desk, their register. And it's a win for me because I get the visibility and they've got gorgeous flowers. So it's game planning. Where can I go next and build more business opportunities and get my flowers out to more people. Yeah. So that's my winter.
Sounds nice and relaxing for sure. What's
making sure I'm still married, little things like that.
Little things like that.
So my husband says The Shining, the winter months on a farm.
We're going to let you get going. You've been very gracious with your time here. But what advice would you give somebody that's looking to transition out of that more typical work world and into something along this side? Yeah. Any words of wisdom?
I think it has to be a passion to make you stick it through, even on the really sucky times like flooding, heavy rains, Lysianthus not growing.
Every time you say that, I think of wedding. It's American Pie, and on the wedding one, he just kept saying that over and over. And every time you say that, my head goes back 20 years or whatever it was to that.
It might even be more than 20. But anyway.
My goodness, right? Yeah. Don't mind.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think something has to fuel you, even on the, the dark days or the I really messed up days, or wow, that's really going to hit me in the pocketbook. Like I did not plan on that one, or I didn't think that one out, but it's still enough to keep, putting yourself out there. And some of that's really raw, putting yourself out there. But if you have the passion and you can go out and, at sunset and see these flowers and, the bees humming and sitting on the sunflowers and think, you know what, life is pretty sweet. And, yeah, it's working, and it's going to work even more. I think that's the basis. And then just have some really great people that you can, call up and cry to, or someone who, is always there to cheerlead. Like I've got fantastic cheerleaders. And they're putting the word out for me too. So I'm really thankful for that as well.
Fantastic. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate the conversation. This was fantastic.
It was fun. Thank you.
And we're going to put in some ways for everybody to get in touch with you in the notes, because I think it sounds like you put on some really great events that I think a lot of people would love to be a part of. So we'll definitely get that out there and get your name out there. Thank you so much for your time.
I would love that. Thank you. And it was really great meeting both of you on live camera.
Yeah,
you too.
Thank you so much. Well, Adrian, that was fascinating. I never thought that I would want to talk so long to somebody about flowers. And I could have had her on for another hour or so. I loved chatting with her, and her journey is pretty remarkable. It's really, really interesting.
There's no doubt that Lisa made it easy to have a conversation with her. Definitely an interesting topic. I hope this resonates with our listeners, because I just think it's interesting to learn about the decisions that people make and some of the challenges that they have. And in this case, about a business decision, right? To go from being an employee to being an entrepreneur. And whether that's something that you're interested in doing yourself or not, I feel like it's an interesting, like, human psychology thing that you might want to, just kind of understand. I also think there's an awful lot of people kind of, living in a job where they'd be interested in running their own thing. And that, to today's conversation, I think, really adds something to the way you're thinking about it, if that's something that's already on your mind.
Yeah. And whether it's in kind of, the retirement timeline, or if it's something that's, a little bit early. And she never did give us that. We're going to get a message from her on LinkedIn. This is the other retirement word that she was looking for.
Oh, yeah.
But it is, whether it's something whether you're in your 20s or 30s and have a 9-to-5 job and are looking for something different, to kind of hear her journey and where she was just like, this is what I want to do. Or it is that person at retirement. Because you talk to a lot of people who get to retirement and they want to busy themselves with something of meaning. And, whether it is in, volunteer work, or, being a golf cart, not golf cart person, but, the marshal or kind of in that world, but you're still beholden to somebody else's timeline. Right. And to go out and say, this is what I love to do, and go out and do that, I think is really, really, really interesting. I'm going to put you on the spot here. If there was something, you're, 20, 25 years down the line, getting ready to, call it quits in the financial planning world, do you have an idea of what you'd want to do as far as that next career, that retirement thing?
Oh, it's such an interesting question, because I tend to have a lot of hobbies, and I tend to turn those hobbies over time. And like you and I mountain bike together, that's a different kind of hobby that I don't plan to get into the business of mountain biking in any way. That's not one that resonates for me, not from a business standpoint. If you're watching this on YouTube, I have fish tanks behind me and all of my, videos and that kind of thing. And sometimes I breed the fish, and some of them are like Lisa was talking about. Some of the stems that she grows are high value stems, and there's a business opportunity there, and it's not unlike the fish. So, I could dabble or get very serious about it and farm, start a business farming rare and therefore potentially profitable fish if I wanted to. It would be kind of something that I've thought about. I like keeping my car super clean these days. That's something that's got into it. So I could start a detailing business. I've got a neighbor next street over who does that, he's a firefighter. So he's got a full-time career, because if you know anything about firefighters, they work 7 24-hour shifts in a month, and then they end up with a lot of days off as a trade-off for that. So a lot of them have a second career. His is car detailing. Interesting. That's something that I've, pondered. I have no intention to change my career and do either of those things anytime soon. Don't get me wrong. But the idea that there is an entrepreneurial step at some point in my life is not lost on me.
Yeah, I like that idea as well. I think both you and I have talked about, our longevity in this, and I think doing what we do, we're able to do this, as long as we've got our faculties, into our 70s probably, if we wanted to.
Yep.
And when I look down that far down the rabbit hole, thanks for asking, Adrian. To me, it might be something in the mountain biking world, and I've seen. But when you get to that age, am I as capable to do it? I love touring people around and showing them, great trails and doing stuff on that side. I've recently been looking at in some volunteer work in the outdoor kind of realm with underprivileged youth. So maybe it's something along those lines where it's less of another career, more of a volunteer. But, I think it does open up your eyes maybe earlier on after having that conversation with Lisa, in that there are some of these things that you can turn the passion that you have into these hobbies into a secondary career. A lot of people say don't mix a hobby with work, but if you are have that financial freedom later on, maybe you're not as reliant on turning a significant profit, that you can kind of mix the two a little bit more if you're not necessarily looking at retiring off of it and retiring into it, I guess.
I think turning a hobby into a business is dangerous because it can ruin the hobby, but only if there's desperation in that business, I think. And I think that's what you're getting at, right? If you have the resources where you don't have to be desperate about the profitability of that business, you still won't lose money. But if it started as a hobby, it was probably a cost to begin with. If you can make even a little bit of money, now it's a business. And if that's fun to add the money to the hobby, then it's an opportunity. right? If it's going to ruin the hobby, don't do that. But if you can, enjoy, trying to turn a profit on something that otherwise was a cost anyways, that sounds attractive to me.
Yeah, I agree. And on that note, really appreciate this conversation, Adrian. Thanks for introducing me to Lisa and getting her on here. What a wonderful conversation. Anybody wants to connect with her, her links will be in the notes for you. So have a look there and reach out. I think some of the things that she does with her personality would be a lot of fun to be a part of. So definitely reach out to her.
And if you enjoyed this conversation as well, our listener, don't forget to like and subscribe and make sure you join us on the next one. We love having these kinds of conversations, and we'd love to have ever more people hearing them with us.
Wonderful. Thanks, Adrian.
Take care, Trevor.